Welcome to DC Trending News, the leading news channel about world political events. Today's news: Putin and NATO are closer than ever to war as Finland and Sweden join the alliance. Former NATO Deputy Secretary General Jamie Shea has claimed that Putin and NATO are closer to war than ever before. US President Joe Biden has vowed to defend every inch of NATO territory this week as Russia and Ukraine continue to spar. Speaking at the NATO meeting in Madrid, he said the alliance would be prepared for threats from all directions, alluding to Russian President Vladimir Putin's aggression. NATO allies have helped Ukraine with arms shipments during the conflict, and experts believe the war has now brought Western nations and Russia closer to direct combat than in decades. Former NATO Deputy Secretary General Jamie Shea was asked by Times Radio this week whether the West and Russia are closer to a hot war than they have been in a long time. He replied, "Yes, but, of course, that doesn't mean that war between Russia and NATO is inevitable." Putin has his hands full with Ukraine at the moment, which does not suggest that he has the means or the intention to attack a NATO member state, he said, but NATO's policy has always been based on deterrence. It is able to quickly deploy sufficient forces to show that it can defend its territory and thus prevent aggression. NATO believes it needs more troops because of the perceived threat from Russia, and is moving from 40,000 troops on high alert to 300,000 troops, he said. What was unthinkable 10 years ago has now unfortunately moved into the realm of the conceivable. Finland and Sweden were officially invited to join NATO this week after decades of neutrality. The two Nordic countries, which both border Russia, have expressed concern about the invasion and possible spillover. However, Putin has warned that he will retaliate in kind if NATO infrastructure and troops are stationed in Sweden and Finland. On Wednesday, he said, "There is nothing to worry us about in terms of Finland and Sweden joining NATO. If they want it, go ahead, but they should be aware that they did not face any threat before. Now, when NATO infrastructure and troops are deployed, we are forced to react in the same way and create the same threats to the areas where the threats against us are created. It is obvious, don't they understand? Everything was going well between us, but now there will be tensions. It's obvious and it's inevitable." The new head of the British Army said this week that the West was facing a 1937 moment because of Russia. General Sir Patrick Sanders, the chief of the General Staff, said Russian President Vladimir Putin and his expansionist ambitions posed the greatest threat to democracy and peace in Europe. He said the British Army was mobilizing not to provoke war, but to prevent war in Europe. General Sanders added, "In all my years in uniform, I have never seen such a clear threat to the principles of sovereignty and democracy and the freedom to live without fear of violence as President Putin's brutal aggression and expansionist ambitions." Anti-British rhetoric has continued to be bandied about in the Russian media this week. A retired Russian general and military expert warned that the UK would physically cease to exist if the new standoff in Lithuania triggered a nuclear Third World War. He also took aim at General Sanders for his remarks. Lieutenant General Yevgeny Buzinski said, "He doesn't understand that Britain will physically cease to exist as a result of World War III. The island will disappear, so one have no idea where he or his descendants will live."